Chairman will I.
Thank you, Tom, and good morning and welcome to today's meeting of the Personnel Committee. I'm Councillor Dennis Bennyworth, the chairman of this committee. In addition to myself and the other members of the committee in attendance are councillors Jeff Brooks, who's the vice chairman, Adrian Abbs and Lynn Doherty. Paula Goodwin, Abby Whitting and Harriet Saunders are the officers who will be advising the meeting. Sadie Owen is the clerk of the meeting and Tom Dunn is the Zoom host. Do members have any questions about the way in which the meeting will be conducted before we proceed? Item 1 then, apologies. Have we received any apologies?
Yes, we've got apologies from Councillor Tom Marino.
Sadie, thank you very much. Item 2, the minutes. Members, are you willing to accept the minutes of the previous meetings as true and accurate records? I'd like to propose for the seconder for the minutes of the meeting of the 21st of February 2022. I'm mindful of the fact that we're quite few in number. Can I have a proposer for those, please? Councillor Abbs, thank you very much. Councillor Brooks, would you be happy to second? Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor Doherty, I don't think you and I were present at that meeting. I'll then take that as read that those are true and accurate records. And on to...
Sorry, Chairman, I mean, that seems to only 2 of us have voted for that. Is that constitutionally okay?
I've checked with Sadie and...
I think it's acceptable to approve them on that basis, yes.
I'm just curious. Thanks.
Thank you. And likewise, a proposer and seconder for the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of May. I think we were all present apart from Councillor Brooks at that stage of the game. I'd like to propose that they're a true and accurate record. Seconder, please. Councillor Brooks, were you there? Oh, well then, thank you very much. I'll take a show of hands that they're a true and accurate record. That's carried. Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, declarations of interest. Have we had any declarations of interest, Sadie?
No.
And from the floor? No. Thank you very much indeed. On to item 4, update on HR activity 2021 to 22. I will pass over to Paula Goodwin to introduce the report.
Thank you. So this is the second time this report has made its way to Personnel Committee. So it was agreed that we would start to produce a 6-monthly HR update report. So like I say, this is the second time this report has come. It's slightly amended from the previous report, so we can go through some of the introduced detail within the report. I'm proposing that we go through it section by section, which is what we did last time, so that we go through, then ask questions per section, because that's probably the easiest way to do it, unless anybody has any objection to doing it that way. No? Okay. So in terms of the report itself, I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of some of the initial highlights of the report and some of the appendices that you've got in front of you. So this is the annual report that you've got. So the data held within the report is based on all of the data for the period 2021-2022. So there isn't any further current updated information in there. So 2022-2023 will be provided at the next 6-monthly update. So some of the data you'll see is based as at the 31st of March 2022, just in case people wondering, because we're now in July, that some of that data is obviously has moved forward since that period of time. The report itself has information in relation to recruitment activity, appraisal, performance management, training and casework. And you also have some appendices at the back of the report. So Appendix A is an update on the current HR workforce strategy. That is 2021 to 2023. It was re-looked at about a year ago. So there's some additions to that particular workforce strategy. So the appendix has an update column on the right-hand side. I'm not planning on going through it line by line, but I'm happy to take questions if members have any questions around the current status of the workforce strategy and any of the work that we are doing or proposing to do over the next year. There will be a plan to review the workforce strategy, obviously, because it will be out of date in 2023, and that will start towards the end of this year, or the work will start towards the end of this year, and then we'll hopefully have a new strategy for 2023. So before I go any further, has anybody got any questions on Appendix A? It's the update of the workforce strategy delivery plan.
I wonder whether you would
So
be
could you
happy.
use your
Can you hear me now? At a glance, I didn't think we'd moved on very much at all. And I wanted an explanation of why we're flatlining, why some of the dates are 21 as targets, and here we are in 22. So I've got those questions, and I'd like to think Mrs. Goodwin would wish to go through those, rather than just, sort of say, how's Appendix A? Well, Appendix A is worrying.
Have you
How
got any
about that?
specific examples that
Do
you
you
wanted
want
me
to
to
have
cover?
them? Thank you.
Well, if you bring it up on the screen, it's quite clear very quickly. Appendix A. There's, I don't. As soon as you look at it, you'll know.
Are you
Review of
talking,
training
Councillor
and-
Brooks, about the highlighted in amber?
Yeah, you betcha. We should be going through all of those, Chairman. I shouldn't have to point them out.
Yeah, it's not deliberately colour coded. So
I can't hear.
it's not deliberately colour coded. So the ambers aren't in there particularly for a reason. That was just the colour code that was put in on the workforce strategy. So it isn't RAG rated.
Yes, but I think
That's what we
it's
look at.
reasonable for you to tell us why something that was target completion date by April 2022 is not completed.
Yep.
Whether it's amber, green, or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, no,
by March
absolutely.
2022. I'm looking at some here, it's 21. Surely you'd want to explain this.
Well,
Yeah,
let's give let's give Paula a chance to do that. Paula?
Yeah, like I said, have you got any specific examples you want me to look through rather than go through it line by line? I'm happy to do that.
Councillor Brooks?
I was kind of page 45, Time Lord 2, 2021, and
Chairman,
I'm quite happy to start off the explanations because there's two there that
Councillor Doherty?
just the way that this meeting is being conducted, I'm sorry, are we using Zoom hands or our actual hands?
sorry,
I'm sorry, just
Councillor Doherty,
because
I'm working from
actual hands.
for the benefit of this, Councillor Doherty, do you mind if we go with actual hands?
That's absolutely
I'm
fine, just so long as I
trying
know
to-
what I'm supposed to do. Thank you.
I do have problems wiring up to the large screen here. So Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I did have a question on the original report and then on this appendix. So just on the original report, 6 point, oh, I've got to go back up to it. Sorry, Paula. 6 point, there's a mention of that we have 350 FTE. I assume that's a typo, that there's currently 350 FTE.
Probably should say
because
vacant FTE.
there's a missing word then.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine, because that was
Yeah.
a little bit worrying. And then with regards to the actual appendix A, which we're currently working through, could you just tell me, item to review the training and development programme by March 2022, says the intentions to start to deliver some new courses from June 2022 onwards. So I'm guessing I'm halfway through July. Has that actually started?
Yes, it's happened. So we did a training needs analysis in around February of this year. And there is a new corporate training programme that is now published on the internet. So as part of that training programme, there are some new courses that are published that are different to what we had previously. So we've taken account of what's come out of the training needs analysis and what people are requesting. And we've looked at the budget to ensure that we can cover all of those requests, well, as much as we possibly can. So there absolutely are new training courses. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly every single individual course that we are putting on. I mean, Abby might have a better idea than I do, but things like resilience training that we've run in the past in small form, we are putting on in greater quantity because that was very popular. And that was requested out of the training needs analysis. Things like IT training, people had requested previously, that has now reduced and people don't want the same level of IT training. So we've taken account of people's requests. People have asked about things like leadership and management development training, which is in the workforce strategy. And there is a plan. In fact, we're kind of starting to look at that at this moment in time. So there's lots of activity and there's lots of changes to that corporate training programme. And it's available on the intranet. So if people want to have a look at it, then
Okay.
it's there.
Thank Thank you. And then my second question, if I may, Chairman. On page 6, we talk about diversity and recruitment, and you talk about a transformation bid to get that person in line to actually help with some of the recruitment and retention. Now, I know that transformation bid has been approved.
Yeah.
Have we started the process of recruiting to that role?
No, so job evaluation has happened. So the job descriptions were put together and they've now gone through job evaluation. So they are ready to be advertised. So they will be recruited to or advertised in the next probably couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Abbs next.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, again, just and sorry if I must admit I didn't see Councillor Doherty's hand either.
No,
it was
it's the chairman's fault. I'm working from this, and I should have.
It was a pale hand on a pale background. Obviously,
well, we'll go with hands if that's okay. With members.
Yeah, anyway, page 45.
Physical hands.
There's a couple of things there. One of them, I think, it's the explanation makes it clear as to why 2021 effectively missed the date. But I'm less clear on this Time Lord 2 business, because it's Time Lord to actively foster positive visits ambitions, and then the project is starting date as it's connected to TL2, which is Time Lord 2, one assumes. So, but it's June 2021, and if that said June 2022, I think I wouldn't be having an issue with this point at all. So can you just kind of run me through how that is interconnected and why it looks like it's terribly delayed, but might not be?
Yeah.
Paula, thank you.
Yeah. So HR's interaction, if you like, or involvement in the Time Lord 2 project has been pretty much around things like policy reviews and work style reviews. And as it happens, there was an email that went out yesterday from Nigel, and the intention is that Time Lord 2 will be implemented on the 28th of July. So the reason that work has slowed is because the project for Time Lord 2 has not been as quick as it could have been. I mean, COVID, unfortunately, it kicked in the autumn again last year, so we had to kind of rethink our plans as an organisation. And obviously we are awaiting refurbishment, and that's gone really well, and we're now almost at the end of that refurbishment. So allowing staff to come back in and implement Time Lord 2 has probably been slower than we would have liked as an organisation, but HR's involvement has been massively positive, I think. So I think that's why it's been delayed.
Sure.
Because
can I ask why
itself,
June 2021 was set as a date though originally? Because COVID started in 2020, not 2021, and everybody knew in 2020 that it was going to roll forward through 2021. It was clear just from the vaccine rollout program and so on, so that we weren't just going to have a clean sweep in 20. So I'm confused why that date was set in the first place. Do we know why?
and I probably can't answer that question, because
it's just one of those things.
It was set at the time that the workforce strategy was set, and it probably should have been amended or updated.
Okay.
I think Abby'd like to comment at that point, Paula. Thank you.
I think it was an aspirational target that the previous chief exec had obviously wanted us to, and we had hoped that that was going to be the case. So when this was sort of set up, I think that was what was the plan. But of course, the picture that changed in terms of the vaccination program going back in and out of lockdowns and other things, and also some supply issues as well around ability for some of the work to be completed because of supply issues such as furniture, etc., has prevented us moving that as quickly forward. But I think it was an aspirational target that the previous chief executive said.
Just come back one more. I don't have an eidetic memory, so I can't remember at which particular council when the exec meeting the Time Lord 2 got approved, but I'm pretty sure it was in 2021. So the explanation of that is an aspirational target would have had to have been in 2020 then? Is that what we're saying? It might be as simple as that should have been updated some time ago and not left at this, this day. And I'm much happier with that explanation than trying to come up with some other.
To be fair, I think we are working with a moving target. And
okay. Anyway, I really from Councillor Brooks' comments about why we could do with a little bit of explanation on some of these points. It's not clear from just reading the point what's going on there.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to come to Councillor Brooks now.
What I would have appreciated, Chairman, is when I look at page 36, the first page of this appendix, landscape, review and training and development program. It is in a sort of amber colour, whether the colours mean anything or not. It says target completion date March 2022. It then says update as at May 2022, estimate completion by June 2022. We're now in the middle of July. And it is reasonable for all of these for Paula to explain where we are, because the report itself is out of date.
I'm happy to go through it line by line. That would be helpful because there have been some changes since this.
Well, that's,
I'm happy to do that. I'm just thinking of time and whether that's if you're happy to do that, I'm happy to go through it.
I said
think
either the
it's-
chairman
yeah.
accepts or not.
I think we can, I'm not in a rush, gentlemen. Councillor Doherty? Paula,
Yeah, happy.
thank you.
Oh, okay, back on. So in terms of, so I will just go through it line by line and just give a brief update in terms of where we are. Because like I say, we're now in July, this is May. The training programme has been changed. We did a training needs analysis, and as of March, it has been implemented. So there is a new corporate training programme. What is happening though is that some of those training programmes that we are putting out, we're still trying to find trainers for. So there is a training programme, but we're still trying to find some of the trainers that help us achieve that complete training programme. Hence the reason it's kind of saying estimating completion by June 2022, because we've struggled to find some of the trainers. But the work itself on reviewing the training programme has happened, and there is a new training programme.
And now June 2022 will become what?
Well, it's done for this year. So there will be an annual review of that training programme on the basis of, we'll do a training needs analysis each year, and then we'll review the corporate training programme on the basis of budget and corporate need. So that would just become an annual.
Would your question
arrangement.
then, Councillor Brooks, be what target completion date is set against that moving forward?
I think so. Thank you, Chairman. Because the document we're about to sign off in a way is estimate completion by June 2022, and here we are in July 2022.
So
It's been, the activity has been completed. So in effect, it's been
that
done.
then.
Yeah.
thank you.
Career progression for women. So this is linked to the career pathways.
That one is green by March 2023.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the exceptions.
Okay.
The next one is coaching and mentoring by December 21.
Yeah.
It's in green, so I don't know what that means, but
It does,
again, that's worthy of explanation, Chairman.
I mean, that has been done. So again, that's been achieved. So the original intention was to do a pilot in relation to coaching. So we had a pilot of around 10 coaches, that we trained, and that was delivered by the target date. What we would like to do, so there's an aspiration to continue to grow that and have more coaches with formal qualifications and have a complete coaching framework in the organisation. So looking at external opportunities to work with other organisations. So we have a broader coaching framework we can tap into. So it's not just internal coaches, it's external coaches, and having a mentoring programme as well. So at the moment, coaching and mentoring is mixed together. We want something that's separated out. And I know from talking to South East employers recently, they don't offer a coaching framework or coaching support, and that's something that they're looking to have. So we are starting to work with other organisations. So we've got a much better way of offering coaching for our employees and our
I couldn't
managers.
agree more, Chairman, but I'm pressing you now because well done, you completed the pilot. Now
Yeah.
you're out looking for other ways of developing coaching and mentoring projects for staff.
Yeah.
Should you not now be putting on this document, which is a living document, you bring it up to date, a target for achieving that? There is no target on here, Paula, forgive me, but you should be stretching yourself to say we are looking and we expect to achieve the rollout, the program to roll out, having done the pilot by a certain date.
Yeah, I don't disagree. However, the objective was to complete a pilot, and that objective has been completed. The aspiration is to go beyond that, and that would be obviously changing the workforce strategy that's already been signed off. So we would actually have to review the workforce strategy and the action plan.
Thank you, Paula. Again, it's in the wording, unless I'm mishearing this. It's the target date has, although to all intents and purposes slipped, matters are in hand. It looks as though what's written there by December 2021 is not reflective of where we are now.
The action that's in the third column has been completed.
Yes, Councillor.
There's an aspiration to go beyond that,
Yeah,
which would require amending the strategy and the action plan.
Thank you, Paula. Councillor Brooks.
Is it if it's an aspiration, it's not therefore being signed off to actually put in a work program, is that correct?
Yep.
So even having done the pilot, we're waiting on somebody, maybe the leader
Well,
over
it's
there,
me,
to agree that we go beyond that.
Yep.
So we're waiting on that. So this is the fact of the matter. We well done, you completed the pilot, but now we're stuck. Now I understand.
Yeah, and some
And I
of
can
this will
ask
form
questions
part
in
of the
another place
review
about why we're
and
not
such.
getting on with it.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah,
Okay.
Chairman, my hand's up. if that
Sorry,
helps you.
councillor Abs.
No, it's okay. No worries. I'm just, it's completed as far as I'm
It's
concerned.
completed.
That's great. But when was it completed?
By December 2021, it was completed. So it was
Right, so it was
completed
completed by
target.
December
Yeah, yeah.
21. Right, okay, fine. So,
Thank you,
Yeah.
Paula.
Do you want me to go through the next one? Because
Yes,
that's March
please.
2023.
Yeah.
Well, the next one for me is by April 2022,
The management and support.
management support development offer for senior leaders.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got review of performance management
I'm
process.
really looking at these ones where time's passed, we're beyond April 2022. Well, it's March 23. To me, it's work in progress, it's ongoing, Chairman. It's the ones that actually look like they should have been done, need an update on those, whether there's any slippage, what the next steps are. If we can tease those out, I think we've made progress.
Paula, management support and development.
Yeah, so that is actually all tied into the leadership and management development program. So if you look at management support development offer for that's been achieved. So if you look at the articulate, promote, offer and development for tiers 3, rollout of coaching, mentoring, all of that has been achieved. However, I think it's connected to the leadership and management development program, which is the section above, and that is being looked at this moment in time. So I think, again, you could say we've achieved the April 2022 priority. Again, it's linking it though to the next step, which is actually already in the workforce strategy, which is the above programme of leadership and management development programme.
Councillor Abs.
thank you. I think following on from this could be quite critical going forward, given the number of senior level staff that have left. And it's great that we have a programme here to develop the next layer down, I guess, which hopefully will eventually lead to people lifting up into those roles. I'd like to see that kind of measured going forward. We can't measure much at the moment because it was by April 2022, where, best will. So if we could make a mental note of that, can we start reporting back on how effective was this? And so as we start to appoint the next generation and this program goes through, are we actually achieving what it's set out to do, which is to train and lift them as we get the turnover? Yeah, no, and I've had that conversation with some of our project and program officers to look at how we can identify KPIs that would do that sort of thing. Lovely, because
absolutely, if you're investing in something, you want to see what that return on investment is going
always
forward.
Management
induction is one that has had to slow down because of the fact that we've had a lot of resource issues in HR and a bit of turnover. So that project was started. And there was a plan put together, but it hasn't been completed. It will have to be picked up when we've got resource to enable us to do that. So that one is not completed, the management induction. Managing networks I went through, diversity and recruitment. Honoraria projects is the next one I have on my list. Again, so that's been slowed down again by resources in HR. We do, though, have an update on this. So I have now got some resource to enable us to do a review of pay and grading and allowances in the organisation. That will start from the 1st of August. So this has literally happened in the last 2 weeks. So there will be a resource to enable us to review all of that. So again, that can be updated on the basis that, yes, it missed the target, but there is a plan now to enable us to do that piece of work.
And then we move on to work experience just beneath that.
I mean, that's been completed. So that's now a business as usual activity. That's something we do on a regular basis. We have KPIs connected to apprenticeships and work experience, and that program's we just continually develop that and work with partners to help us do that. So there's lots of activity in that area. 2023. So the next section is around mindfulness. So the wellbeing applications, they're October 2022. Do you want me to go through those because they're coming up? No?
Yeah, please do.
Time Lord we've talked about, unless you want me to go back over that.
I think we've covered that unless members want to go over that again. No, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Paula.
so EAS, so the EAS was completed last summer. There is an action plan that's been drafted, and that will be signed off, well, hopefully in the next week or so. So that again, it's slightly behind where it needs to be, but that has been completed in terms of that activity.
And
Councillor
Chairman,
Brooks.
will members, forgive me if I've seen anything of it, but will we see the employee attitude survey as members?
I don't believe that some of it's been shared, but not all of the information's been shared with anybody. So relevant information's been shared with focus groups. So not all of the information's been shared with anybody.
In the past, members have seen the whole employee attitude survey, not what officers think is relevant. Could we see the employee attitude survey, please?
I mean, it's something I can take away.
Abby'd like to come in at
yeah.
this point. Thank you, Abby.
I just wanted to say that Lynn has been part of the project group and has seen sight of the action plan and been involved in that discussion with Nigel. So there was a project group set up after the ES was completed to look at developing the action plan. And I can confirm that Councillor Doherty was involved in that process.
Thank you very much, Abby. Councillor Brooks.
I'm making a formal request that members see the employee attitude survey. Now, the leader can decide that we shouldn't as opposition members, but I'm making a formal request that members, as has happened in past years, see the employee attitude survey analysed as you would wish to do so, but we see the raw data. I'm making that request, and no doubt I'll get an answer at some point, maybe not here, maybe outside. Thank you.
So that request away.
Thank you, Paula. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, to back that up, I anonymise the, I assume it's anonymous, the data anyway. I wouldn't want to see specifics of anybody. But I think it's really important that we understand directly what the thoughts of the employees are, so we can make our own judgments as to, you know, the future needs. Especially even if it was restricted to members of the personnel committee, you know, and that's kind of important for me to understand what the people are thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. That's noted, and I think, Paula, that's something we'll take away from this meeting. Moving on to any other outstanding points.
Payroll specification, do you want me to cover that off?
Yes, please.
So we have a HR payroll system called ResourceLink through Zealous. That contract has been extended till 2024, and we have actually just completed putting together a HR payroll finance specification for a system that would be integrated, and when that is signed off, hopefully in the next week or so, we will be going out to full procurement in relation to looking at systems. So again, that work is continuing and is on track at this moment in time.
Thank you very much.
Raising concerns projects. I mean, this is around some policy reviews, and again, due to other priorities and resource issues, that has not happened. It will be picked up probably more towards the end of the year when we have the resource to enable us to do that. Internal communications, this is actually connected to the staff survey, and one of the actions that has come out of the staff survey, or will come out of the staff survey, will be to formalise an internal communications plan, and there is a requirement to have HR resource and comms resource to help us do that. So again, that's probably slightly behind because that action plan hasn't been signed off yet, but that's imminent. So once that's signed off, we can move forward with that as well.
On that point, I've got Councillor Abbs who'd like to come in.
Actually, sorry, Chairman, it's not on that point. And the gears in my head are running a bit slower than you're speaking. Going back to the ERP HR payroll system point, my brain's telling me that, the ERP project was put on hold a while
Because
back.
of COVID, yeah.
And just because of COVID, right?
Is
Because
my
there's quite a few
understanding.
million associated with that project.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're now certain of the dates that we're seeing in the report here.
Absolutely.
So has the ERP/HR actually gone out to tender yet then?
No, it's about to go out. So
It's about to go.
we've spent the last 3 months probably putting a specification together. HR, payroll, finance. I mean, Harriet's involved in that project, so I'm looking at Harriet, and it's quite a resource intensive process putting that specification together. We've had somebody help us do focus groups to make sure that the specification is absolutely where it needs to be and give us that feature system. But yeah,
just to declare not an interest, because I don't sell ERP software, but my company does host various pieces of software, some of which is ERP software. And previously I've suggested that because of the knowledge associated with that, I'm quite happy to review the spec you're putting out there before you put it into the public domain for quote. I'm not asking for you to send it to me for a quote, to be absolutely clear. However, I have direct knowledge of this type of product in the industry. So if you want to take a proper look at it, in addition to your, quite happy to do that, because I think, you know, you've got millions of pounds of products that
we've actually had a consultant come in that is an expert in that field, that's completely independent. As you say,
you had a free consultant here.
We had a consultant in to support us through that process. So absolutely doing what you're saying is suggested. We've been through that process because we know
if it's not gone out to tender yet, then I would still appreciate seeing what it's actually asking for, because I've seen lots of stuff come out from the council which is sometimes overspec.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to again take that question away because I don't know what the.
Yeah, indeed, but it was an offer initially. I made the offer a year ago, actually, when that project, or maybe even 2 years ago now, when that ERP project first came up. So, you know, again, I've said this many a time. You've got members' resource here that you can call on. Doesn't matter which party, which side of the fence it's from. There's areas of expertise that you can call on for help. So
yeah, just appreciating there probably are rules around what's allowed and what isn't. So I don't want to say
I
yes or no without checking that out.
No, I don't think there's any harm in asking for
Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Paula?
I think that's everything then. Everything else is kind of 2023, unless anybody's got any other.
Councillor Brooks, was there anything else you wanted to raise?
Are we still on Appendix A?
Let's
Appendix
do
A,
that one up first, I think.
I'm okay with Appendix A. The one I want to get my teeth into is recruitment.
Okay, well, let's move on then, please, Paula, if you move on to the next section, please.
Yeah, okay, so obviously having gone through Appendix A, so we'll go through the paper, as I've said, section by section. So the next section is around HR data. So we are required to publish annually HR data, and in its previous form, we have something called the annual employment report. We felt it required a bit of an update just to ensure that we were providing the data that was needed. Hence now it's in the form of the Personnel Committee report rather than it being in a separate report. So what you've got is an appendix at B and HR data there, which I think Abby's probably just going to highlight and take questions on.
Yeah, I'm happy to take, I'm assumed, obviously, councillors and members of this committee have read the report, so I'm not going to discuss each section.
Abby, before you move on, sorry, I'm just going to come to Councillor Doherty.
Of course.
Oh, no, it was a question on the data.
It was,
so
okay.
Abby's saying she doesn't want to, and I'm quite happy with that.
Sorry, I thought you wanted...
No, it's a specific question on the data.
Okay, Abby, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm happy to take specific questions, as I say, rather than read through line by line, because that can be somewhat tedious and you've already read it. So,
Councillor Doherty, thank
yes,
you.
what's your question, Councillor?
It was the starters and leavers during each full year, and the average length of service, both of leavers and employees, and sitting around the 7 to 8 years. Do we know, I'm sorry about my ignorance here, Abby, how that compares to other local authorities and to perhaps the private sector? I don't get a sense of, I don't know enough about it to know if that's a good or bad indicator.
Okay, so yes, when we were developing, we have a KPI about turnover, which is about leavers and starters, clearly. And when we were devising that KPI, which has been in our KPIs for at least 12 months, if not before, we did do some benchmarking against other organisations. So we used LG Inform, which is obviously the public sector data. And we were, you know, on a par with other local authorities, bearing in mind there's some quite significant differences between local authorities. So comparing, we obviously have adult social care, for example, where others don't. And when we decided on that KPI of 14% and under, that was considered an appropriate KPI. Looking at that benchmarking data, I haven't retained in my head all that benchmarking nuances, but yes, we have looked at that. Traditionally, the public sector has a slightly higher turnover than private sector because we generally have, different sort of species of services that we provide. There have been some impacts in terms of turnover in relation to Brexit and some people, returning home, etc. And obviously changes to immigration and what are skills shortages, because now there are some different requirements in terms of whether the people can. But yes, we did do that benchmarking piece. We haven't benchmarked the average length of service. I'm not sure that if we can access that data. I haven't looked for it, if I'm totally honest, but we did look at the particular turnover.
Thanks, Abby. It was the length of service. I'm just curious how long people normally stay in a position, regardless which sector they're in. So
I'm happy to take that away and see if I can find some information to include for a future report. I'll have a look if we can benchmark.
Okay, thanks, Abby.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. That would be useful. I've got Councillor Abs, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Lots of data there and lots of numbers, and I try to think of myself as a numbers man, but I do like quite like a graph occasionally as well. So that, a few pivot tables, a few bits and bobs, this information will be a lot easier to absorb if in a tab, in some kind of chart format than in just a
I'm happy
page
to
of numbers. That would be
that
for me great. And the reason, and if in fact, if I look at the Appendix B right at the top, the vacant full-time employees, I said, that would have brought out the significant jump in the vacant FTE that's occurred, year 2021, 2020, quite clearly. I think the other thing is the full-time posts. We need to kind of look at the numbers and make sure we're looking like for like. So when we have a percentage, it must be the workforce isn't stable size. For various, it's reduced here, reduced there. So you've also got to make sure it's amortized correctly too, so that the change is clear. Because I think the workforce is slightly bigger. Is that right?
We've got 1,000.
Actually, the overall headcount seems to be relatively stable, so it won't make much difference. But anyway, you just make sure when you do the graph that you take those things into account. And then if you've got levers and starters, try and overlay the information so we can see the gaps occurring and decreasing and so on. Okay. And then ideally go back to the various projects that we've got and try and put influence points. We started this program here and this is the effect it had, because there won't be instant effects. It'll be 6 months or a year later. I know that's asking a lot graphic wise, but in terms of looking at the data and understanding whether we're on the right track, it's much more impactful. Well, for someone like me anyway.
Take away your points and have a conversation with Paula as service lead about how we present this data going forward.
Yeah, by all means leave the raw data there as well, because I can always extract that and run my own, but it's much easier if someone else does it for me.
Okay, thank you very much. And Abby, that's something you take away.
Yeah, I'll have a conversation with Paula about how we present this data going forward and have a conversation about what we can.
Well, hopefully it'll highlight things for yourselves as well. It isn't just about presenting it.
No,
it is about presenting it to yourselves as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks, Chairman. Looking at this data, there's a lot that I thought was good about it. I look for trends, and you have to dig a bit for the trends, but if you look at the percentage of all starters during the last 5 years for each age range, under 25 has doubled from 10% to 20%, 21%. Now, I think that sounds healthy, but I wonder if it was a strategy or just happened by happenstance. Equally, 55 to 64-year-olds is down from 17% to 10%. Was that a strategy? Or again, is it work? Is it employment, labour force changes? So a little bit of detail behind that. But certainly that looks to me like a healthy organisation getting more young blood into the organisation.
Should we look for a comment from officers on that point?
Yeah, and then I may come back.
Who'd like to pick that up?
I'm more than happy to
Abby,
give some
thank you.
comment. So I think we have seen a steady increase in the under 25s over the last few years. And I think that's partly about our initiatives around apprenticeship strategies and work experience and some of those pieces that we've been doing. So that has been getting our name out there as an employer and sort of connecting with those groups. I think also we do need to point in 21, 22, there was the Kickstart scheme, which was the COVID scheme. And we, as a council, took a number of those Kickstart placements, which I'm very pleased to say we have actually converted into apprenticeships. So a good proportion of those have converted into apprenticeships or permanent positions within the organisation, which is exactly what the programme and initiative was designed to do. So I think hasn't been any specific initiative to increase young people per se or reduce people at a certain age bracket. Obviously what we want is a diverse and inclusive workforce, and yes, there has been work around that to basically we'll be doing more around our comms and engagement team about getting messages out there, and I think that's stuff that's come from the peer review around celebrating some of the things we do. So you may have seen some posts about officers going to help with mock interviews, with things like that. All these things are obviously helping to make West Berkshire Council as an employer sort of be more prominent and for people to recognise us as an employer and the diversity of what we do. I think that's one of the big things that, when we have work experience and projects that we do with schools, I think they're learning that we do more than just bins and potholes, should we say, or whatever.
That's helpful, Chairman. As I say, I don't see anything in this data that's alarming, and in fact, some of the trends I think are healthy, even if they are a result of things that are outside our control. But where I am confused, and a direct question here is, we'll be coming on to recruitment retention. There's an article in the Newbury Weekly News this week about agency spend. I see a figure of 193 vacancies, and yet in this paper, this Appendix B, the vacant FTE is 305. So does anybody have any understanding of why I'm seeing two figures on that, please?
Who'd like to take that?
I've got to do it.
I was just going to say, I haven't seen the Newbury Weekly News article and what's been published in there and where that.
Sorry, that wasn't
The numbers
specific to them. It wasn't specific to them. I saw it in the council paper as well. 193 vacancies, and I've got 305 over here.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is A, the timing, and B, the fact that this includes all vacant posts on here. So that report, that data came from the transformation bid that was sent around that I think Lynn has mentioned previously. So it doesn't include any temporary staff on there. So we only put permanent staff on that report that went in relation to transformation funding. So there's a difference because this is all posts that we currently have on our establishment, whereas, and like I say, time has changed as well. So data is different, but this has every post on it that was just permanent posts.
That's quite
It wasn't reported in that way, but yeah.
That's quite a high percentage of the establishment.
Yeah.
It's 20-odd%.
It is, yeah.
establishment.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
That's a lot. And that, to me, is something we should be highlighting and saying we're going to target that to get that down.
Yeah.
If you've got more than 20%, I'm doing the maths in my head here, it's more than 20% of our establishment is vacant posts looking to fill. That's a lot. And I think it should be, say this to the leader through the chair, can we have a target on that where we say that shouldn't be any more than, say, 15%, and then we work towards it. These are the sort of lessons, I think there's a reason why councillors come to meetings to suggest things like this.
I mean, I don't know whether we want to pick that up as part of the recruitment section, because there's a section in there about agency and transformation funding, and we could probably.
The leader's too astute for me to put her on the spot here. She'll take that away.
Have a look at that under that section. I've got Councillor Ives. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to quickly look at the equalities data for a moment on page 50, if that's okay. Previous meetings, I think it's been pointed out that we have a workforce that's heavily dominant on a particular, not female, it says here 77 versus 22 male and so on and so forth. We talked about programs to try and understand why we weren't able to get more gender balance in the overall workforce. We're a couple of meetings on from that now. I don't know if you've got something in progress that you're thinking of, but I'd be keen to understand. And secondly, someone mentioned Brexit. So I try not to use that word anymore, but anyway, Brexit got mentioned. And it doesn't seem to have affected the numbers as far as I can tell from here, but you indicated there was some effect of Brexit that was happening in terms of recruitment. So how do we start to kind of link that data through to what we're seeing here? In other words, this is the result of where we are, male, female, this minority, that minority, and so on and so forth. But the programs we've got going, how are we expected to see the trends change? Or
Thank you, Councillor. On that point, then, the male-female split, that's not uncommon, I think, amongst authorities. But do you want to comment?
It is because of our high numbers of, because we've got adult social care, and obviously carers mostly are, well, not mostly, but there's a higher proportion of women in the care sector than there are on men. In terms of responding to the question, I will respond to the data, and then if we can pick up the programme of activity and recruitment, because it's all connected as one piece, and it's just easier to kind of keep it together. In terms of the data that you've got here, I mean, I think we're aware that we don't have 100% worth of data. So as an organisation, we encourage people to provide us with equality data. Of course, male, female, we have to have legally, but everything else we don't have. So in terms of the makeup of our organisation, it's based on the data we have, and I would want to encourage more people to provide us with that information. So that's something there's a whole piece of work around data that isn't in the workforce strategy that I think we probably need to have a look at in terms of improving the quality of our data that allows us then to assess where we are as an organisation and to use that data to then absolutely measure the programmes of activity, because at the minute it feels a bit like we don't have the full picture in terms of that data. So I think that's where we are in terms of that. We do have some plans though, in terms of how we're going to improve that and the complete pool of candidates, not just male, female. We have to look at having the biggest pool of candidates that we possibly can for any types of jobs without any restrictions. So I think it's broader than that kind of male, female. It's actually about how we encourage people to want to come and work for us. It doesn't matter what their background is, as long as they meet the requirements of the job, then I think our doors are open. So.
Yeah, it's something we brought up before, the requirements of the job and how the job description is written, and does therefore the job description only allow someone who's already employed by another council to apply for the job. Yeah. So we see this all the time, it's kind of people moving from one council to another, but it's really about how do we bring new blood into
out there.
So I just coming back to this whole equalities bit though. My understanding from the previous meetings is that as a council, we were aiming towards following initially the census data, and we're still using 2011s, I believe. As
they haven't published the next
round of. So, but we must
came out in the last couple of weeks, literally.
Okay,
so
good. Yeah,
that's
right.
the reason we haven't had a chance to have this in.
So how we are doing against the census data is going to take a step change fairly shortly. Could we start prepping for that? And how much worse or better off them are we, and so on and so forth. But I mean, if we are as an employee looking to make sure we're made up according to the census data, then it doesn't matter to me that other workforces are in the same situation. That just means there's a more generic problem that exists than the one, and someone has to lead the way in kind of either achieving what we set out to achieve, which is equality, or not. And I'm a believer in equality. So, the fact that we have an odd situation here, that it's the opposite way to what it normally is, okay, I accept that, but it doesn't change the fact that we've set a target and therefore we should be going after achieving that target.
It's a national target. That's what every organisation measures themselves against, is the census data.
Indeed,
now,
but I don't think the
that's
proportion of men and women is going to change dramatically in the new census data. The ethnicity might have changed a bit and so on and so forth, but it's unlikely would have seen a dramatic change in the male-female roles.
But I think the other point to make is that with COVID and with hybrid working, actually, even though we measure ourselves against the local West Berkshire data, our pool of applicants is broader than that now. So we need to be careful what we use as a measure into that. I mean, legally we have to do that, but actually going forward, is that something we want to
Sure.
be better at? We might want to, a higher percentage rate of.
And I'm okay then, you bring
target,
that to
so-
council and council agrees a new policy and explains why it's following this policy and so forth. That's all okay with me.
Yeah.
But, at the moment, we have a specific thing we said we were going to try and achieve, and we're either failing, and if we're failing, we need to explain why we're failing.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we're kind of around where the figures are for the census data, but of course, we need to look at
Yeah,
the new
sure.
census data and see where we are with that.
All right, I think the point's made.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brooks.
Are you moving on to section 6 at all? Do you want to take points on that now?
I think we're done there, unless no?
So I can introduce my points about recruitment.
Don't really want to go through and just highlight the section of the report in any form before we take questions.
So I'm happy to move on to recruitment retention. I think we have done the data piece, as it were. So yeah, we've had quite a lot of activity around. There's been a lot of recruitment activity, as we've kind of noticed in the turnover and what we said about vacancies, etc. We are doing some work on developing. So we've developed a children and families microsite for the council. We were just about to finalise the adult social care, and we have done some revamping of our recruitment pages and the recruitment website. That project happened, and some data from that went to our, as a project closure report, to Customer First projects group, I think this week. So there's been some activity around trying to improve our presence and how we present ourselves to the recruitment market. So I just wanted to highlight that before taking questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Brooks.
Okay, there's two thrusts to my contribution here. One, you're looking to take on talent acquisition specialists. And two, the extended spend on agency staff. I bumped into Joseph Holmes while he was walking his dogs, and poor man, I doorstepped him and said, "Now, what's all this extra spend, Joseph?" And he said it would be coming here today, and that a lot of it was around agency workers, adult social care workers. Well, what it doesn't have is very light on detail of who all those extra agency workers are, very light on detail. And an analysis has been done which tells us that it isn't all adult social care workers. And I'm really keen to know more about who all these temporary workers are we're taking on. It's running at £3 million more than budgeted this year. And for instance, in May, in finance and property, we spent £42,000 in May on temporary workers, agency workers and temporary staff. So I understand that this is not a committee for finance, but I do think we should have data about what roles we're taking on from commensurate, from agencies, a lot of off-panel stuff as well, that we're not able to recruit for. We should really have that ability to look at that at the department level. I think members understand the tensions in adult social care, care workers, probably children and family services, possibly education. But in finance and property and strategy and governance, where we are spending a lot of money on agency staff, we should have an understanding of why. And it is considerable, that spend. Now, if I go back to the talent acquisition specialists, Councillor Abbs 20 minutes ago offered his expertise.
Yeah, I just on that point. I think we'll take the first point. Yeah,
and then you come back to the other.
I think that's what we're about to say. Councillor Doherty.
No, it's not. I'm actually wondering where we are on the agenda.
Item 6, recruitment and retention. Part 6 of the report, recruitment and retention.
And
I have a different report. Sorry, the report Sadie sent me stops at item 4. So that's
Section 6 in the report.
The content.
Councillor Doherty.
we've gone back up.
Yes.
Thank you. I've got confused. I will go back up.
So are you going to
So
take my first point
I think
about this
I'll put that point
overspend
to Paula
in
first.
agency and temporary workers, and with some detail on what the tensions are, and particularly in the non-adult social care arena?
Paula, thank you.
So, I mean, I just want to point out, and I'm not trying to dodge the bullet at all, that actually commissioning are responsible for the agency contract that we currently have with Commensurate and IR35. So the detail actually would be sitting with them.
Can I say, forgive me, you're absolutely right, but it is one of the problems because HR should be having that data available to them. So do dodge the bullet, Paula, because it isn't aimed at you. But this committee should be able to receive this data in detail. And if you haven't got it, that's something wrong with the organisation.
Okay, so let me just continue though. So in terms of, we put a transformation bid in, as you've rightly said, to allow us to have a couple of talent acquisition posts because we don't have the resource in HR. HR's recruitment team are very much a transactional team. They upload adverts to Jobs Go Public and we wait and see what comes back. So we do the kind of direct recruitment, if you like. So I wanted to ensure that we started to tackle some of the issues that you're flagging, hence the reason to put the transformation bid in. I did have a bit of data as part of that transformation bid around agency staff. Now, adult social care and children families clearly are operating with the highest amount of agency staff in their area. Children families, I think off the top of my head, is around 25%, and adult social care is something around the 45% mark at the moment in terms of agency staff. So we know it's high, but you're absolutely right. It is not just in those areas. It is in other parts of the organisation. So resources has the smallest amount of agency staff, as you might expect. And of course, Place also has a reasonably high proportion of agency staff. Now, I think we calculated there was around 200 agency staff in the organisation based on the data that we had around the commensurate information. Now, of course, that we don't hold that data in HR. So in the future, there is an aspiration also to look at the data that we hold against our establishment to make sure that we map across, we know who we have in the organisation and what agency employee is it sitting in which post, because that is the information we don't have. We have, say, 200 agency staff in the organisation. We might have 200 vacancies, but at the moment we can't kind of overlap in terms of where they're sitting. And the same with IR35. You know, there are contractors in the organisation that are fulfilling some of those roles that we have in the organisation. So in terms of, absolutely, you're right to ask those questions. This is a national problem as well. So conversations with other councils locally and nationally, and been flagged by South East employers. Recruitment is, I say, at its worst. It's great if you're a candidate, not so great if you're an organisation trying to encourage people to want to come and work for you. You know, we are seeing people who historically probably wouldn't have left organisations suddenly deciding it's more attractive to go elsewhere, and therefore, you know, vacancy rates are slowly creeping up. And of course, you know, we need to also do something about that. It's not just about looking at agency, it's looking at our retention offer and our salary, and hence back to that kind of pay and grading review and looking at recognition and the whole package of our employer value proposition, which is what those two talent acquisition posts will help us do. They will go through absolutely everything. I mean, Adrian, Councillor Abbs mentioned around job descriptions. I want those posts to also look at our job descriptions. Are they open enough to attract people? You know, are we using the right processes, procedures? So looking at our policies, you know, absolutely making sure that it's as open as we can be to attract people. So there is a plan to help us do that. Of course, it doesn't just sit with HR. And I think I need to point that out, that, you know, obviously we will lead on that. And I want to, I think I said I would try and get that agency spend down by 3 million in the lifetime of those posts, which was 2.5 years. And I think that's doable from talking to other councils. I would hope it would be better than that, actually. And we can get to a place where our agency spend is as minimum as it has to be. But of course, that's reflective of where the market is as well at the minute, and that market will change. So there is the intention to do something about it, and I absolutely want to get to the bottom of the data, hence the reason to have those posts to do that. but I don't hold all of that data. So if that's something that members want, that would really need to come from commissioning initially to be able to explain some of that spend. I think the other point to raise is in terms of budgets, we all hold staffing budgets, and therefore managers probably need to kind of explain particularly why they've got the need in those areas in terms of that agency spend, because there may be very good reason. I mean, COVID is a very good example of that, whereby I think we've seen a threefold increase in our advertising, haven't we, at the minute, because of the fact that managers didn't, for whatever reason, advertise some posts, or there's been additional funding, and therefore there's been more recruitment activity to fill those particular posts. So there's lots of reasons. What I don't have for you at the minute is a complete answer, because I need those resources to look at that data and then give us a plan, really.
Councillor Brooks, before you come in, Abby just wanted to come back on that very point as well first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in also that particularly in the 21-22, we have had a number of things like lateral flow testing, like the community support hub, and more recently the Ukraine support hub, where we have been I know we have used agency staffs to help ensure that our council response is appropriate for those particular things. So that is why, yes, we have got agency spend that is in areas and things like COVID grants and all that sort of stuff. That's why there are sort of broader than our social care teams where we've had agency staff perhaps traditionally.
Okay,
So
thank
I
you
just
very
thought I'd
much.
add that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brooks, we're going to come back.
You're giving broad brush answers because you don't have the data. I have the data. And all the things you're saying make sense, but I would be requesting through you, Chairman, that commissioning are at their next meeting. Because if commissioning have got the answers, then they should be here. I talked about £42,000 spent on agency and temporary staff in finance and property. £37,000, £38,000 was spent on development regulation in May on agency and temporary staff. I've got the data here and you haven't. Now that data is in the public domain and has been analysed. But if commissioning are the ones who've got it in this organisation, they should be here explaining this overspend. So can I go on just to my second point? Because I think
let Paula come back on that.
Well, I don't think they've got the data, and I think
you made the point, Councillor Brooks. I think it's only fair that Paula comes back on that.
No, and I think the other point is that this report, as I said at the beginning, is very much around 31st of March 2022, and I did make that point. So the data you've got is more up to date and more detailed. We haven't been issued that data. I think if you want to have more detailed information, that is a request back to commissioning or to Joseph to really consider how that's best provided and whether it comes through personnel committee or through another source.
I will take it up with Joseph, but if you want to talk about March, we spent £46,000 on finance and property agency and temporary staff. So it's not just beyond March. I can go back month by month by month here. I won't. And I put you on the spot for data you haven't got. But I think, Chairman, you get my drift.
I do. And
we need more data and more information. Now, my second point, and this is a bullet you may struggle to miss, this one, the duck. On page 7 of your minutes, the February meeting on recruitment. Councillor Brooks offered to provide some advice to the HR department, given his significant experience and 38 years working within the recruitment sector. The portfolio holder for internal governance, culture and leisure, Howard Williston, welcomed Councillor Brooks's offer. I have not been contacted. Furthermore, Councillor Brooks requested sight of the service level agreement and had agreed to discuss that and the off-contract spend with the HR team. I have not been contacted. You have now decided on a strategy to take on recruitment acquisition specialists. I'd like a lot more information on what they're going to do that you haven't done before. And I have to say, with Councillor Abbs offering his expertise earlier, my offering mine in February and not being followed up on, it just goes to show beyond HR, this organisation is not interested in members' expertise because there's a sense of we know what we're doing and we don't need your support. And that I find very sad indeed. But my question is about these acquisition specialists. What are they going to do? How are they going to make a difference? What targets are they going to have? So we know what the outcome on that investment will be.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Doherty on that point.
Yeah, I just want to come back on that because I feel it's unfair to level it at the officers in this room today. And I would say that Councillor Brooks seems to not understand the role of elected member in the scheme of delegation here, that we have professional guidance for a purpose and it is not his role to offer that professional guidance. So I think there's a little bit of confusion here around the role of elected members, decision-making processes in West Berkshire and officers' roles as professional guidance with those qualifications. And that wasn't declared as a conflict of interest at the start of this meeting. And I've heard both members opposite me offer their professional guidance of services. And I just think that is not fair on this committee. It's not an issue for that committee. We're looking at the governance structure completely at the moment as we're going through. And I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
I'm sure
And
Councillor
yet,
Brooks
Chairman,
will come back at
Thank
me.
you.
Yes, indeed.
Councillor Doherty. Councillor Brooks on that. And you want to come back on that
once, and then
before I put it to Paula.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any member who's got subject matter expertise, I thought would be welcomed in this organisation. There's not a conflict of interest. It is career specialisms that could help the organisation. I would have thought you would have welcomed that. The officers having listened
okay, thank you.
to the officers having listened to me don't necessarily have to take anything I say,
noted.
but they're entitled
Your
to
kind
listen.
offer, and as Councillor Abbs, very much noted, and I'm sure that will be taken away and considered accordingly. Paula, would you like to come back on Councillor Brooks's point?
So I suppose the only point is around the new post that we are getting. So it will be run as a project. And there will be specific KPIs. The point was made when the bid was put together that if those posts don't deliver what they are required to do after 18 months, that they will be removed, if you like, or ended at that point in time. I suspect it will be the opposite, and actually they'll be delivering far more, and that's the intention. So I've been working with one of the programme officers, and we will be putting some very strong KPIs together to ensure that those posts deliver absolutely what we want them to do before those individuals are brought into the organisation. So we will be monitoring the impact of those particular individuals and the posts that they're in.
Thank you, Paula. I've got Councillor Abbs next, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to wind back a bit because it's to do with IR35. You mentioned it quite a while ago. Well, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt the flow of what was going on, but anyway, IR35. I'm a businessman, and my wife retired recently, and she retired recently, and the reason it's relevant specifically because of this IR35 issue, where she worked for Bayer, and I'm just wondering whether this IR35 is actually having a direct impact on the costs that we're now experiencing, because one of the effects of IR35 as it's come through is to take individual people who are acting, and they've now been required to go work for agencies, and some of them are just going, it's not worth my time because of for whatever reason, and therefore they retire, like my wife did. But what it means to us is that depending on how we're running our IR35, conditions, we're using bigger agencies, and therefore we're just paying a markup for the pleasure of using a bigger agency to do the same recruitment we would have done. So in other words, the cost of the people we're getting are just higher for no real reason other than people are worried about IR35.
Paula, thank you.
I mean, without looking at the data, and again, that's not something HR normally get involved in, it's really hard to answer that question. I would say that there has been a cost increase in agency staff, so IR35, as well as agency staff can pretty much command a higher rate because of, if you're in certain areas like social workers, you can command a higher rate, and of course there's a shortage of those. So that's the only reason I think we would see an increase. But
so that is worth as noting, is that because this is not local legislation this is national legislation that's come along, and it's having an effect that probably wasn't intended. Yeah. But maybe something, I don't know, Lynn, that we can work together on to go, is that actually what we wanted? It's going to cost us more to do the same thing. It's not what anybody wants, is it really?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we need to have a look at in relation to how we fill our posts, because if we're using consultants,
well, it's usually up to the individual to decide their IR34 status, and the employee determines it for, and they can say, well, we think you're going to be in breach of IR35, therefore we, show us why you're not. But anyway, there's something we can do, and we can make an active effort to potentially, at least accept those conditions where people say, I meet it. And it's,
I think we've got, from what I've seen, there are policies, procedures and guidance in place, and it looks very robust as an organisation in terms of that.
yeah,
R35
I'm sure it is
process.
robust from our side, but
Yeah.
it's maybe so robust as to cause us extra cost is probably the point I'm making.
But certainly something we would, like I say, as part of the whole package
Okay,
of looking at our talent attraction, we want to look at all of that.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you very much. Paula, is there anything else you'd like to, Abby?
No, unless there's any further questions from members, I think we've discussed recruitment and retention. So the next section is moving on to an area which is around casework, which I will pass to Harriet to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, performance management. So again, I will assume that the committee has read the paper. I don't propose to go through every section, but very happy to take specific or general questions if anybody has anything that they would like to query on that.
All right, thank you very much, members. I think, Harriet, you've got off fairly lightly there.
I see people's faces concentrating.
Just arrived at page 20 and reading down. So just
So I think if it helps, I think the thing that probably will jump out more than anything is around kind of the level of absence that is being reported in relation to stress, anxiety. We are seeing that across not just the council, not just public sector, but across all sectors. And while we can suggest there's a correlation between COVID-19, between cost of living increases, for example, and the other stresses and strains at the moment, we don't have enough data over enough period of time to be able to prove that causality. It's very easy to, as you know, probably to conflate two sets of rising data and say one is the direct relation to the other. We can't do that at the moment. What we are doing is trying to provide a robust and wraparound support network in terms of our employee assistance program, our new occupational health provider, which we are seeing our referrals go up to occupational health. And in my view, that is a good thing because it means our managers and our employees are getting the support levels that they need. We also do offer counselling for our employees as well. Normally 6 sessions if that's believed to be helpful. And that isn't necessarily because of work-related activities, it can be because of personal stresses as well. We will sometimes look to extend that if we think that that would be helpful. So as I say, stress is something that HR as a profession and the subject matter experts, we are keeping a really close eye on, but unfortunately I can't give you a precise answer as to why we are collectively seeing that at the moment, but it is certainly something that we will be keeping a close eye on, particularly as we do start, for those people who haven't been in the office for the last 2.5 years, particularly as we do see people starting to come back in, it will be really important to be checking on their well-being and their mental health as we go through that process.
Harriet, thank you very much. You didn't get completely off scot-free, but Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. And I think the introduction of the employee attitude, the employee assistance program has been a real positive. And I know that was a piece of the workforce strategy. So well done. I think that's good. I was pleased to see Nikki Davis at Let's Chat talking about what was available. And I think that's a really important thing to make sure that there is that availability. I mean, we know with mental health, the stresses, there will be multiple stresses internally and externally, which is impacting on people. But I just wanted to tie the question, if I may, Harriet, to the appraisal performance management completion, because I think we're seeing the biggest indicator of stress and sickness in the people directorate. And while I recognise the improvements that have been made, and they have been, and I've been monitoring them closely on the appraisals being completed, it does stand out to me that the people directorate is behind the other areas. And I just really think that we need to make sure that our managers are doing the appraisal system within that area, because part and parcel of that is a supportive system which will help with stress and understanding of stress. So just on that point, I was going to make that. And then I was also going to say, it's going to be really interesting to monitor the implication of Time Lord and actually the positive impact on people's stress levels and mental health. Because I know personally coming back into the office and actually seeing people is a real positive for myself. And I think people have been really quite isolated and, although very busy, lonely during the last few years. So I think getting people back into the office has to be a priority so that we can actually be talking directly to people and understanding what is going on there.
Thank you. Yes, so I think we'll probably come on to appraisals and performance management anyway. I have a kind of personal view on appraisals and performance management, and that is, of course, that it's actually the quality of the conversation a lot of the time, rather than that one-off annual sit down that's really important. And I know that when Nikki, as our wellbeing officer, is looking at those, that's the sort of overview, holistic approach that she's very keen on taking, and that we are discussing as an HR team as well. And I agree with Time Lord. I started remotely in February, so to come into the office, I've been quite giddy with excitement on the odd occasions I've come in. And I think we need to reflect that some people are worried about coming back into the office, and that is understandable. But yes, when you do come in, it's really lovely to see cheerful faces and make those connections. And I really hope that we start to see that positive impact over the coming months.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just page 23 for reference. Actual number of days lost per person is down as 9.95, so 10. I think the average in the UK is 6.9. So forgetting, that's everybody, including obviously people, civil servants, if you like. What is the real explanation as to why, or do you have an explanation as to why we have, in this particular sector, such a high level of sick day absence versus the public sector?
Partly because
private sector, sorry.
Partly because we do have that scope of adult social services, for example, within our workforce, whereas some other organisations have those outsourced, so it doesn't get included in their data. We do, and of course, those would have been the front line for the last year on people who would have been affected by COVID, and now we know getting it more than just once, 2 or 3 times as well is entirely possible.
And Jim, do you mind skipping the COVID argument though, because the number was still 9.84 in 2019 before COVID. So I do see a slight difference between the two. COVID keeps being used time and time again as the panacea problem that we've all faced. The data here says it isn't, because it's, we see changes during COVID, but we're past that now. At least we're supposed to be, right?
And I can't give you a precise deep dive into that. What we have with our data is that we have some of the output of the data, but we don't always gather our information in a way that enables us to draw that analytical conclusion. And that's a historic, partly because of the way that our HR systems and our processes have gathered data. And you mentioned previously, you're a numbers man.
Try to be a numbers man. Right?
Well, I have a slight background in HR analytics, and actually, if you are going to get down into the data dive, it's how you spec your processes and your systems in a lot of ways to be able to do that. I've talked to Paula about how I would like to get a little bit more under the skin of that. I haven't had that opportunity to do that. And to do that is always a longer term project, but I do have that as an aspiration to try to understand in a little bit more detail.
Yeah,
because I would like to know as well.
The other thing I'd like to see, because it's not shown in anecdotally at least, or certainly if you search the internet, this says there's a difference between sick days usually experienced based on gender and so on and so on. And you've then started to point out an industry that's dominated by a specific gender and so on and so on. It would be nice to see that breakdown, because it's not to make a point other than what extra programs do we need to put in place to specifically cope with that, issue related to gender, if there are issues that we need to address.
I wouldn't disagree with you. I'm not sure we have the depth of data to be able to do that as it stands, but it's absolutely an aspiration to look.
We should have the data at least on a male-female basis, right? Or
on that level of data, yes,
Yeah,
and for
sure.
some of the deeper dive, not necessarily.
yeah, I think
Like
as
I
a
said,
as a
it's not an
start point,
aspiration.
how big, because then you can create a specific program if necessary to address a specific issue, if there is an issue that can be addressed.
Well, we
So,
can certainly look to see if there is anything that we can
Lovely.
influence, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Harriet. Abby, you wanted to come in there, please.
Only very quickly, I just wanted to pick up on the point we were making about making sure we're looking after the well-being of staff. And what I just wanted to draw to people's attention was we've amended the one-to-one form, which is actually obviously more regular than your appraisal. And that has we've got some very specific targeted questions. Nikki Davis, our wellbeing officer, has put some guidance around that for managers to try and encourage those wellbeing conversations and to draw out where obviously internal or external factors. So I just thought I'd remind people of that.
That's useful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And Abby, I think it's on to you.
Okay, so the next section is around appraisals. We've kind of touched on that, but I'm happy to take any questions, take into account that, as always, the data is a snapshot in time and we look at a window of when appraisals are completed. So every time you do the data, that window is moving and people fall in or out of the window. Not saying that they shouldn't all be, we should aspire to be 100% all the time. I'm not suggesting that, but just as that. So if there's any questions specifically on appraisals, I'm happy to take that. Otherwise, we can move on.
Members?
So this is section 8 on page 28 of the report. If everybody wants to try and navigate back to where we've got to.
I think we've found where we are. And I think
Okay.
we'll move on. Thank you.
We'll move on. So then the next section is on training. So we have touched on this as we've reviewed the workforce strategy, that we have done a training needs analysis, and we have used that and will continue to use that information to inform our corporate programme. We have also mentioned about the fact that we're now introducing the resilience and wellbeing piece as part of our standard remit for training, because that has been really popular and continues to be a very popular course, and people have found that really valuable. And again, linking into the absence and the stress conversation, that's a really important part of the training programme. We've had, obviously, over the last few years, we've not done so much face-to-face, but we have been doing virtual classrooms, and that continues. And our training needs analysis suggested that people have continued, so we asked them to rank their method, and Zooms with a trainer was our top choice. So we are continuing to deliver. Now we're theoretically back in the real world again, and we continue to have a range of e-learning, which we're constantly reviewing and adding to try and make it beyond just what is required in terms of mandatory training, but also to expand things around stress, well-being, maybe understanding people's needs like neurodiversity, autism, etc., so that we have something beyond the standard remit. So we've had a good number of employees who've done e-learning, good percentage of employees. Most of our mandatory training is on a 3-year refresher. So one course is on a 1-year refresher. So obviously we do get some peaks and troughs in the numbers, and as we've noted in the report, 2018-19, when GDPR came in and everybody had to do it, that created a sort of a spike, shall we say.
Yeah.
That's all I have, unless there's questions from
I've got
members.
Councillor Abbs's hand. Thank you, Abby, by the way. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thanks again, Chairman. Training's an interesting. I'd love to know what percentage of your mandatory training has any kind of test associated with it to ensure the training has taken hold.
So yeah, most of our e-learning courses require you to complete an assessment quiz at the end of that. So that is, you do the e-learning, but there is also that test quiz at the end. So
are all mandatory trainings
I would have to
available by?
double check to give you categorically that all are, and I'm happy to provide that.
I could extend that to members training as well as indeed.
But yeah, I am happy to provide you with to double check, but we do actively encourage, because actually what's more important is are people understanding it, not just clicking through the course.
Yeah, that's all it's
So,
there
yes.
to test is the understanding. there.
Exactly, and that's why we include that.
Okay, and is that maybe something that this committee could have sight of between now and the next meeting?
I can definitely find out the answer whether we've got the quizzes yet. Obviously, we do have KPIs around mandatory training, which go regularly to members in other areas and committees. So I won't produce that, but I will confirm whether all mandatory training has an assessment piece as part of that.
That would be useful, I
can
think.
do that.
Councillor Abbs.
No, that'd be great. It's just, you know, I'm more, as we've just said, it's more about did it take hold? You know, the other thing, there is another minor point to do with if you are in an industry, then I guess this is more a member's point than it is anything else. And you have a qualification and a training you need to have done in that industry. We have a lot of trainings and a lot of meetings we need to go to. And we, for a Monday night, we've got a taxi liaison meeting, which will overlap another member's training. So I won't be able to do one if I'm at the other. And I'm not even sure there's another members meet. You know what I mean? So e-learning, if it's there, if I can prove I've done it online, I'll be really happy with that. And you can then see that I'm ready to do whatever going forward.
HR don't actually manage the member training, that's executive.
It's not, so that's not under this particular training element. Okay.
No. So
ignore everything I've just said.
No, it's fine. Member training isn't covered in this. This is employee training. Member training is covered by the strategy and governance and the that team and the exec cycle team.
We're employees.
But where a lot of member training is happening now, a lot of it is on Zoom, and that's being recorded and it is being offered out to members who can't attend to then.
Indeed, Sadie, it's just that you're not testing us as to whether we absorbed it. And so when you get to planning and some of the other quasi-judicial functions, it might, you'd have to, talk to all the members, not just me, but there might be a case for
benefit in doing,
benefit in doing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Abbs. Abby, did you have anything further to?
Nothing further, unless there's any questions.
Harriet, I see your hand.
Thank you. I was just going to say anecdotally to Councillor Abbs, somebody who's just done a lot of mandatory training as a new starter. Yes, I think I was tested on pretty much everything.
Excellent.
Good to hear. Well, unless anyone knows anything different, I think that just about wraps up this meeting. Members, thank you all very much indeed. Officers, thank you very much indeed. I've got a date for the next meeting for the Personnel Committee set as Friday, the 11th of November, 2020. Councillor Brooks.
Are you going to consider my request to have commissioning at the meeting in November?
I think we're going to take it where it's an action, aren't we?
I thought that was the understanding, Councillor Brooks, that was taken away from the meeting and
Considered.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. So the next meeting of this committee is set for Friday, the 11th of November of this year at 10:30. We'll consider. I know that's it's proving problematic with some members. That might be discussion we'll have further down the line. There's a bit of time to sort that out between now and then. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for your time this morning, both members and officers. And that is the end of this meeting.